Okay, good evening. Today is Tuesday, February 11th. This is the regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 28th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? All those in favor? Yes. We have an opportunity for public comment. Have any public comment?
Wow, come right in.
Hello.
Yes, it's quick.
I'm Amy Christie. And I went to the YES conference this past weekend with a group of students, so kindly funded by the Rhinebeck Science Foundation. And my students will be here in 2 weeks to talk about their action plan and their experience. But I'm here to talk about our choice for our next superintendent. And what I brought was New York State's new climate bill. And I think it's super important that our next superintendent be a forward-looking person who is working toward a sustainable future for our youth. I think there are so many qualities that we need to look for in a superintendent, but our Mr. Phelan has been here for many years, and our next superintendent could be here for many years as well. And climate change is real, and it's happening now, and we need to change the way our school functions in terms of its carbon footprint. And New York State law, it's a new climate bill. It's called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, and it commits New York to reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which is 30 years from now. And by 2030, 70% of the state's electricity must come from renewable energy, and that's only in 10 years. The bill requires 40% emission reductions in absolute terms from 1990 levels by 2030, and an 85% emissions reductions by 2050. So I understand that the problem is bigger than just our school. It is a statewide issue that is being worked toward, but we need to do our part. And when we were at the conference, there was a school, Warwick was represented there. They have a grant writer on staff, and they have, I don't want to misspeak my facts, but as far as I understand, they have been granted about $500,000 of grant money for solar panels, a greenhouse, composting, all of these initiatives that reduce their carbon footprint. We are top-heavy in administration as our community is shrinking, and it seems like it would be a good move if we had one of our administrators take on the role of being a grant writer, finding grants. I hope that more grants will be made available in the future. It seems it's the only way that public agencies like schools will be able to fund changes that are being mandated by New York State. We simply can't probably afford it through tax revenue. Some of these, the turnaround time, it takes a lot of forward thinking, and I hope to encourage you to hire a superintendent who will work toward these goals voluntarily. And a question that should be posed to them is, look, I don't know who they are and I don't know what their histories are, but if they come from other schools, either as a president or a superintendent, what have they done to promote sustainability in their own districts, and what would they suggest our community do, and how would they get this job done to reduce our carbon footprint so that our kids have a planet that's worth living on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
you hear me well enough? I don't even know if this is on, but Susan St. Clair, President of the Rhinebeck Teachers Association. I also wanted to speak on the topic of the hiring of the new superintendent. I do appreciate that the board has taken to looking to get input from other stakeholders. I did just want to say that what the model is, it does make it difficult for the teachers. The time is an hour before the Chancellor School Day starts, and I know that we've been asked to give a commitment to all 3 days, and for the middle school and high school, it's the time right after. What makes it difficult, because our only time is outside of the school day, is if that isn't convenient time for teachers, either they have childcare commitments before or after school, and they're being asked to commit to all 3 days. My concern is that it will make it difficult for people to accommodate that. And I think if you're looking to get that input from all the teachers, that's just my concern. And I know that Diane, again, thank you for emailing me and having that conversation. The other piece is whether or not we would be getting some basic information about the candidates. I don't think we're looking for their resume, a copy of their resume, but I think we need to get some more information before we're meeting with them. It would streamline those meetings. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going? I'm Henry Frischknecht, 7th grade social studies and computer science. You guys have a lot going on, it feels like. Superintendent search, long-range planning stuff, there's a lot on your plate right now. I have a whole thing I wrote here. I'm not going to read it the verbatim, I'm just going to kind of fly. I want to say first, I appreciate all the work you're doing. I appreciate you kind of creating an opportunity for us to really reflect on what we're doing here in our district, specifically with the middle school and the potential restructuring in middle school. You've really made me personally reflect hard on what I really value about our middle school, and go into even deeper research in terms of what a middle school is, what it should be providing for our students, and how we can kind of accomplish that. I will say straight from the beginning, I don't believe that restructuring the middle school to a K-6, 7, 12 model is the way to fix those issues. In my personal research, I've seen a few things. Obviously our issues are lower enrollment, tax cap levy, we have school reform going on. Some of the things that I've seen in the research that would be best practices for a middle school are smaller class sizes, less classes for students on a given day, highly qualified teachers that continue to strive for better education for themselves, right? I don't feel like the restructuring that way. I think that's going to make it more difficult for us to attain those goals. I grew up going to BMS over at the old building that's falling apart. We had the ceiling coming down. I had teachers like Pat Kern and Nancy Abel. I had, Nancy Erlanger, people I've worked with as colleagues also. They had a vision. They would go out into other communities and see what those middle schools were doing. They were trusted as educational professionals to get together on superintendent conference days and figure out what the ideal middle school is, right? I know you feel the same way I do about our children, and I know that there's a tax cap levy and the situation isn't the same, but I'm asking you to trust us. Give us an opportunity to come together. Let us work with the administrators. Give us time during school. Give us time in superintendent's conference days, PD sessions. Facilitate that organization so that we can develop something as educators. I promise. I can send you all the research I've done. I've sat for hours and done research on this. My colleagues have done the same. I haven't met any of my colleagues that believe that bringing the 6th grade to the elementary school is the best solution for this. I don't know the financials, that's not like my game, but I do know education. I would ask you to allow us to have agency in those decisions. make us the change makers, right? If there is no buy-in, with my colleagues, and we're like forced in a certain direction, I think that's going to create anger and frustration. We're not going to be at our best as educators. I like all of you. I don't want to be mad. Like that's not good for morale. It's not good for me. It's not good for any of us. I really, really would encourage you to facilitate that change and allow us to develop a plan. And I'd be happy to sit and talk more about what I would envision that looking like personally. But yeah, I think that's everything. Agency, morale, yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hate when people read off their phones, but it's all I had, and I didn't want to forget anything. I'm Chantal Collins. I'm a fifth grade elementary school teacher here. I'm also a parent, or still a parent. My children went here. I live in the community, and I'm a member of Climate Smart Rhinebeck as well. There's been a recent positive shift in the amount of support for creating a more environmentally friendly district. It has people excited and hoping to see changes to the status quo. As a school, we have daily impact on the environment, from building usage to kitchen and cafeteria garbage to waste of resources like paper and ink and other school supplies. Wasting resources impacts the budget as it costs all of us more in taxes. It sets a bad example to children who are the ones that are left with the mess. And it impacts all of us as we keep throwing out plastic and paper and food and other supplies that end up in landfills or oceans. I sincerely hope that you consider a candidate who has a commitment to a greener school and who will actively support sustainability and a better world for our children.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pat Sexton. I'm the Executive Director of ENTA, the Education Network for Teachers and Artists. We've got about 9 programs running now in the Rhinebeck Central School District, and we're hoping to do more. But tonight I'm actually here as a Rhinebeck resident and a parent of kids who went K-12 here, and I've been hearing a lot of change about this middle school restructuring, and I really want to get more information about it because I don't really quite understand what the reasoning is, whether it's financial, whether it's outcomes. I think there's a lot of ways to go about problem solving when the problems are identified and identified deeply. I've seen a lot of places that automatically go to a financial situation, automatically go to an outcome situation without looking at the whole child and the whole picture. And I'm just curious where this came from and what the rationale around it's going to be. And I'm delighted and happy to serve on any committee or any research that needs to be done on this, because as a teaching artist in the schools, we've been working in the schools for about 14 years now, and we have seen amazing things working with students in alternative ways, and I've always felt that Rhinebeck has so much opportunity to be model programs for so many interesting ways of teaching. And even though the numbers are shrinking and the money is tighter, I see this as opportunities to figure out ways to utilize the school in more ways, utilize the auditorium more. The auditorium sits fallow for months and months of the year, and it's not being used as a resource for the community. And I remember when I was serving on the CISB committee to move that budget forward about the auditorium, that was supposed to be a community hub for things. And I think a lot of community loss is happening across the country, across the world, that there's an insular thing going on, and finding ways to bring community more in on these kinds of decisions and on ways that we can really turn this school into a vibrant community and have more input and have more ways to bring money and resources and things for kids to do, I think would be a really valuable thing. And I just wanted to let you know that all the way here to help figure all this out and what it can be and what I can bring from my observations as a teaching artist in the school for 14 years and what I've seen succeed and what I've seen happen with students. And I hope the superintendent is very supportive of the arts, because learning through the arts and making creative human beings is what everybody wants. And I hope that we can work together in future on more ways to expand our human resources and not contract anything. Second. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Alyssa Barnes, 7th grade math teacher here in the district. I just wanted to say that I'm both elementary certified and 7-12 certified. I've worked in high school before I was here. I worked in elementary school, and the reason I love my job so much is because I work with middle grades. I think that students in the middle are a really unique group of people. The way that we design our middle school right now with team teaching is incredible for their social and academic development. The time that I have to spend with them because of common lunch periods, common study time periods, the time I have to talk to my teammates about students that are succeeding in one class and not in another class, and why is this happening, how is this happening, and the way we can get together as parents, and the way we can include with our, special ed department and the consultant teachers following the same group of kids around the same schedule and knowing intimately what we're doing in every classroom to support them fully and wholly. It's just all part of this middle school model that I just would like to say is working amazingly, and I'd love to make sure that whatever our long-term planning doesn't lose those things that I think are really successful here in the district right now.
Anybody else?
Mr. Grayson? Oh, gotcha.
Okay, we're going to move on to our reports and discussion, but I want to thank everybody that came out tonight, and I appreciate all your comments, and it's always helpful to hear from all of you, so thank you for coming tonight. We're going to start with our 2020-21 budget development.
All right. Before you have your binder set up as we have in prior years, budget calendar and tax levy limit and the rollover budget. A lot of this stuff is already in there, but if you go to budget first draft tab and put that over, we're going to skip the tax levy limit and the revenues, so go about 4 pages in, a couple pages in, and you'll get to the start of the budget at the top there. What I'm going to do is give an overview of it. I know you'll have a lot of questions, you'll come up with questions, but I'll go along and hit the highlights, and then we can talk about, as we go forward, what other questions you have. We don't have a big gap this year. Our delta is not as great as it has been in other years. And as I go through, I'll explain some of the things that are in there, and there's still a lot of things that need to go on between now and when the budget gets adopted. So I'm going to take a 10,000-foot view of the budget, and I'll look at the highlights as we go from the first page on, but I only hit the highlights because I'm sure you'll have questions based on that, and we'll have more time to inform you of the various things that are in this budget and what may not be in the budget. So on the first page, really just the only thing that really highlights is the second line from the bottom is for the superintendent, is a salary, an estimated salary in there of $210, but there is additional monies in the budget if needed. If we go on to the second page, okay, there is a big item under the business office in clerical. This is if the entire staff stays the entire year. We've added the senior account clerk. We had budgeted half-time right now. In the previous year, it's now full-time, and we'll have to see what occurs over the next few months as we get further into the process. But our new senior account clerk is working out really well. She's picking up real quickly on the programs, and she knows payroll, but she's picking up on our program and our processes. So that's been a very good hire by the business office. As you can see in a lot of the other codes under the business office, there's decreases, and a lot of that has been a switch over to the new system. So we have found that things are cheaper as far as supplies. other expenses too. We've been able to reduce that amount. And one of the things you'll see throughout this, and I'll talk to it a little bit more, is copiers. We've consolidated copiers under Steve Jensen, our Director of Technology. So they've been taken out of the principal's office, the business office, the guidance office, the special ed office, and all grouped together for the Director of Technology to manage. But we'll get to that later. So there's no increases whatsoever in copiers. If you look at all the lines together, they all wash each other. It's just all been moved to control under our Director of Technology. If we go over to the third page, and in the middle of the third page, you'll see legal school attorney fees. This is not an increase for school attorney. Our school attorney's retainer has remained constant. But I had to add $10,000 to it. We've had, as you know, we've had quite a few impartial hearings and having to pay for the officers who conduct that and for the stenographers. We have found that this area has picked up quite a bit, and so we were looking at $10,000 to that area. We blew through this year's budget already, so we have too many of them this year. But that's how it goes. If we flip over to the next page, operation of the plant. So there's quite a few changes in this area. So the first thing you see is a negative in custodian, and that's because we have converted 2 cleaners to cleaner groundskeepers. So I've taken out the cleaner portion of that, or the grounds portion of that, and put the grounds portion down into the section below in maintenance of the plant. So one of the things that in looking at equipment, and you'll see there's a big increase to equipment not only in the 1620 and the 1621 also. As a part of this project, Sheldon made a conscious effort to modify what was being done on the fields, because actually our fields got in a lot better shape over the past 2 years as far as not needing to regrade everything, reseed everything, and that whole growing period. He thinks that our fields, in the most part, for most of our fields, have gotten back to where they needed to be, but to keep them there, he needed equipment. So we made more than over $100,000 saving to the project by going that route. And what he's looking to get is a tractor, an overseeder, so that he can work on the fields year-round with his crew. And the other thing he's looking to do, we've never replaced the courier's minivan, so that's in the budget. And there's a tractor, an overseeder, of that. And if I look under operation and maintenance in here, when you get a chance, I'm not asking you to go through it now, but there's a section here for operation and maintenance, and if you look at the detail, you'll see a breakdown of each of the pieces of equipment that he's looking to purchase: a van, a tractor, an overseeder, and that line. I need to look back at that because I think they moved the money out of the one place, but I didn't subtract it from the other. So I think there's going to be some savings here. So when you look at that $105,000, it's not a total of 105. So I'll be backing off some money on that because I took it out of one place. I put it into a place, but I never took it out of the other place.
And what happens to the 100,000 saved from the capital project? Where does that go?
To other parts of the project that were over budget.
But we can't put the cost of this equipment into there, or?
You get no aid on it. It's an idea. If we get to the end of the project and we have a pot of money left over that we can't use to finish something because it's not enough money, that's what we plan to do. So it is possible that we may be using the capital project monies, but at this time, we're unsure of that because we really, Sheldon wants to put an emphasis on the parking lots to make sure that they are going to last for another decade. He's very concerned about that, to get that all done at this time. And the other thing too is we were able to, and if you'll see here, and this goes along with some of the sustainability, a lot of this project did go towards sustainability, and a couple of things that we've done so far in this building is new windows have been put on around the entire building now. So we are not going to be spending as much on fuel oil as we had. We don't know how much we're going to save yet, but an experiment that was done a number of years ago when we put new windows on the front of this building, overnight on a 10-degree night, it never called for heat the entire night. Well, a classroom on the other side of the hallway, which had the old windows, called for heat 7 times that night, while the other didn't call once. Not until it called at 6 o'clock to say, okay, we're increasing the temperature back up. That was when it would kick back in. So we're kind of hoping, and we're monitoring this over this year to see how much our fuel costs really look. But we know it's less. How much less, we don't know yet. And that goes with electricity too. As a part of the project too, we put in all new LED lighting, not all new. I don't think this is new in here, but throughout 95% of the school, LED lights were put in, and that's helped reduce our electricity cost. And this coming summer, the window walls will be put in over Chancellor, but once again, that will help retain the heat within the building. So we're looking to see how much those type of things will save us. So we'll see this number come down over the next couple of years until we get a real idea of how much our real fuel usage and electrical usage is after all these upgrades. If we go right below that, you see a big, not a big increase, a $6,200 increase to BOCES services, and this is because the phone now is a voice over IP, and we get all our maintenance through BOCES now, which becomes BOCES Aidable. Well, we'll talk about that later. But that's why you see an increase, as we had to add a maintenance contract for the voice over IP system. We get to the next section with maintenance of plant. We see the increase for maintenance, and that was because of the groundskeeper / custodians really switching one person out of custodian into groundskeeping. I know there's savings in equipment, so I'll go back and take a look at that, so I know that will come down. Also, in the code, the second line from the bottom, Mr. Phelan had me put $40,000 into the budget for sustainability projects. Doesn't know what they are yet, but we put money in there to address sustainability, whether it's in the form of a grant writer or an actual project. I don't know, but Mr. Phelan had me put $40,000 into the budget to look at sustainability and see where we go from there. So we've been listening. We do listen. So yeah, we're not here to hear it. See, so please get that message back to them that we put $40,000 in the budget for sustainability. Now, whether the board keeps it in the budget, that will be the big thing. So we got to get to make sure there's no increase. If we go on to the next page, on page 5, at the very top, you'll see an additional $71,000 under central printing and mailing. And this is a consolidation of all those copiers, the maintenance and the copier, and the leases of those. That's why you see the big increase there. And if you take a look at the bottom special items, insurance all districts, our insurance rates have been very good over the past few years and actually have been going down. We haven't had a claim in quite a while. Let's keep it that way. But you do see a fairly big increase of $15,000. And this relates to cybersecurity. We do have cybersecurity insurance through our insurance company, but they've said that you should look at additional beyond just what they give. And they're very upfront about it. You should get more. And so we put an application in. We're waiting to hear back about what that cost is. But I would expect it to be $10,000 to $15,000 higher. And hopefully we'll have a quote back in here so I can scale that back if we have to. Go over onto page 6, sorry, under curriculum development and supervision. First of all, the first line there is the director, but this is everybody with the administrators. There's actually 3 years of increases. I thought it was 2 years, but when I look back, it was actually 3 years of increases here. So that's why you're seeing that percentage to be up a little bit higher than you typically would, but that's 3 years of increases since it was in the budget. It was settled last spring. We never adjusted the budget for it, and it was a carryover from the following year. So, right below that, you see the curriculum development. You'll see an increase of $20,000. Marvin has kept it steady at $75,000 for curriculum development, but I was requested by the elementary school for an additional $20,000 to put it in for responsive classroom training. That hasn't been done in a number of years, and there are quite a few new teachers there, and the idea is to get those who haven't had the training in the responsive classroom model they've been using there. Let's see. If we go over onto the page 7. So I just want to hit the highlights first through. You'll have time to go back through and create questions for me. Under in-service training instructional, Marvin had increased this from $15,000 to $20,000, and at our administrative council, we were talking about Lynn Lyons and what she brought to the table. And I know we got a grant through the Rhinebeck Science Foundation to bring her in to give to meet with our parents and with our staff, and we want to continue that into next year. We want to make sure we have the funding for it, so we put $20,000 for our teaching staff to continue development with Lynn Lyons. So under regular school, at the very bottom there, you will see some low numbers, some negative numbers in there. What I want to tell you in the first one is you'll see the second line down there, teacher grades 1 through 3. We had one teacher retire out of there and was not replaced. All right, she was a first or second grade teacher, so I was told which teacher was thought to be going down to that first or second grade, so I put them down there, and the net result was actually a negative number. If we go on to the next page, 8, if you look at the top of the biggest number of all, it says teacher grades 9 through 12. We had 3 retirements, so that reflects 3 retirements being replaced. They're in the budget. In there, we will take a look as any retirement, anybody leaving. We ask the principals and the supervisor of that person to justify the need for that position. So we'll be going through that. We've already started that process with the principals where they had their retirements, and the big one being 3 teachers at the high school level. Later on, there was 2 teachers at the middle school for special education who have retired. One of the things interesting, Mr. Jenkins sent me an email this afternoon in regards to class coverage, and you saw the increase in BMS being kind of large and the decrease in the high school. So what we have to take a look at here, and maybe it's something on our end, because usually class coverage is really generated by the high school. I'm going to have to check with our account clerks to see. Just because the teacher's a middle school teacher, you don't charge the class coverage to the middle school. You charge it to wherever the absence was. And I think that may not be happening. I think maybe class coverages are being charged to the building in which the teacher is in, not the building in which needed the teacher. So we'll double check on that. But class coverage has come down. So overall, I did decrease class coverage by about $10,000. They're doing a good job of trying to, though it has been difficult at times to find substitutes, especially at this time of the year when sickness is going around. So right now there is a bit of a shortage. So we're usually out 1 or 2 teachers a day, it seems like, short. But a lot better than it was earlier this year. At the very bottom, towards the bottom, I just want to bring something up. It's under equipment. The high school social studies, they've requested $12,000. They're looking for interactive goggles and computer and software and everything that goes so they can do field trips right from their own class, as opposed to a bus, and being able to do activities they would never be able to, like the Louvre or something of that nature. So interesting concept is to be able to do field trips in the classroom. So this is for social studies, and we want to see how that works as we go forward. If we go over onto the next page, 9, up at the very top, one area that's really been kind of going out of sight lately, and that's tutoring services. Finding our own tutors to tutor kids at home. So there's a lot more tutoring that's been going on in many different capacities, in person, online courses, through BOCES, in hospitals. So it's an area that has been a great concern to our staff, is the number of kids that require tutoring for multiple different reasons, anything from health reasons to mental health, illnesses of the like. It's getting very difficult to find people to be able to do this, so a lot of times we're having to change it to online tutoring services where it's appropriate. At the very bottom of that page, I knocked off $20,000 in tuition to other public schools. That's for foster kids who we have in other schools potentially. I know we were reduced by one, so I took out the $20,000 in there for that. Excuse me, on page number 10, textbooks high school, $23,000. It's a new series. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly which grade level that social studies were. I can talk to Dr. Davenport to get, where those amount of monies are going. For in the middle school, grade 6, you see a large increase to textbooks of over $20,000, and that's for a social studies series that's more than 2 decades old. So they would like to replace that. So we're doing that. If you go a couple lines down from their BOCES services, this is an area of concern. And you'll see a very large number go in there. And it's something that's really popped up in the past year or two, and that is students who are in various crises, usually require a stay at BOCES of a couple weeks, sometimes a couple months, until the student is found their right place and come back to the high school. They're usually temporary in nature, can last anywhere from 2 weeks to a couple months, but we're finding quite a few people going through the program, and so I've put in 3 slots for that. We routinely have a number of kids going in and out throughout the year. It's not like you have one person, you identify the person, that's the person. It's not like special ed. These are things that just pop up. The student needs help, and one of the ways, unfortunately, some of the ways that happen is they're either hospitalized, where we have to get a tutor to go in there. That's actually BOCES helps us with that. But once they recover from that situation, a lot of times they require a transition period to come back to the high school here, and they start them off with smaller classes at BOCES to get them in the right place so they can be integrated back into the high school.
Tom?
Yes.
You said this is 3 slots. If it can be anywhere from a few days to a few months, what is a slot?
Well, meaning just put 3 people. I just did 3 times
Sounds like the average.
the average amount. They're about 30,000 apiece. And I also included 3 slots for the BARD early college program. Okay? Does everybody know what the BARD early college program is? All right, it's a new program. We were actually looking at it last year with Red Hook to go to Hudson potentially. I mean, it was just all in the discussion phase. And one of the things that, as we discussed it, was the timing just did not work. Because we needed to share transportation with Red Hook, and for us to use Red Hook, either our kids only got a couple classes here before they had to leave to pick up Red Hook. There's issue on the return because you had to drop the Red Hook kids off to hit the bus and then get down here in time. Logistics wasn't working. So BARD talked with our Dutchess BOCES and presented the program to Dutchess BOCES. Dutchess BOCES is planning to run, it's an early college program run by BARD, where our students would be able to go to the program. It's like a half-day program. Their emphasis is on English and social studies, so they're not going to do all their classes there, but they would do some classes while they do the rest of the classes here. Usually it's the math and the sciences that would be done here, while English or ELA and social studies would be taught by BARD professors. It's the same cost as a CTI student, which is roughly around $11,000. Don't know the logistics yet. Was told that it would be down at BOCES and that we would be able to use our current bus that goes back and forth to the CTI program. But there was some discussion they may move the program to another school, which would make it, I'm not so sure anymore. Now we have to get into the whole logistics again. Even if you move it to Pine Plains or Hyde Park, it creates a logistic problem because I don't have a bus going there at that time. So more to come on that, but just wanted to give you an idea of some of the new things that are out there that we're proposing. Let's go on to page 11. And this is where there's some major changes. We forgot final regulations for ESSA. And one of the things that I kind of like because they broke out a couple things. So as you can see, just about every code under salaries and teaching special education is less. And that's because I've removed speech teachers and ELNL teachers out of programs for students with disabilities. They have their own separate codes now, so they've been removed from there, and you'll see them later on, but you'll see some negatives there to begin with. Believe me, they'll make it up later on. So don't get overly happy with that, because all those positions are just in another place. One big negative is the 2 BMS retirees, so there is savings there for that. You do see a $30,000 increase, and that is we have a student who was tuitioned before, but is now homebound, and that $30,000 is for a homebound tutor. Okay, so, but he's been taken out of the tuitions. All right, so let's flip the page over, because the next thing you see up there is tuitions. And you'll see that it's a big increase. And I would say there isn't really additional students going. They are switching programs, going from different programs to the other. But the big difference is potentially right now we have 2 students who are residential. Right now we have the potential of 5 residential students. All right, so residential students cost a lot more because not only are we paying for their education, we are paying currently 40% of their maintenance. In the governor's proposal, that's supposed to go to 60%. And that's a huge bite. That's a huge bite right there alone. That could cost us with the 5 additional ones, that could cost us up an additional $100,000 to $150,000 depending on what the residential placement is. So this is one thing that has been brought to our legislators' attention that we would like to see the governor's proposal on raising our share from 40% to 60%. Actually, they're 39.7822. Just use 40 and 60. They're really little numbers, but they get really. But basically, they're going from 40 to 60%, putting that additional 20% on, moving it from state to us, to the district. It used to be split, us 40, the county 40, and the state 20. And now they want district 60, county 40, state nothing. So that's the current governor's proposal.
So this number doesn't include that?
Yes, it does.
It does include that.
Yeah, it does include what I estimate to be. Now, one of the big things that will be ongoing as we go through this, Ms. Davison has just started her CSE meetings, and things do develop and change as the year goes along based upon what is agreed upon. So what we try to do is take the worst case scenario, and then let's be good about, depending on what occurs, that we'll be able to reduce that amount. So that's more to be seen. If you look down a couple lines down, you got BOCES services pretty much in line with where it was in the previous years. You'll see a whole new section down there, Programs for English Language Learners, or ENL, as most people are now know it by, but it's listed Programs for English Language Learners. And those salaries are coming right out of special education. So they just moved out of the 2250s to the 2259. Next section is a nice little decrease in occupational education. We have a couple of students who have graduated from other programs. I'm not talking the normal CTI, but such as BOCES, but the P-TECH program and Questar 3. Those have 2 graduates, so 2 less slots, and only budgeting for 22 students because I used 3 for Bard Early College. So it's the same amount, but belong in a different place. Schools and libraries, not much difference at all. Very little. If we look at the next section though, and you'll see that there's a big decrease in equipment. That was because of the E-rate program where we had to buy things ourselves as equipment. Those monies have been moved back to BOCES services for potential leases. As you know or may not know, with the governor's budget, it's created a lot of issues when it deals with BOCES. It basically right now says it's freezing it. That whatever you got now, that is what you get in the future. They put it into foundation aid for some unknown reason, but it's in foundation aid now, and whether, right now as we were told, whether we do more services with BOCES or less services with BOCES over the coming years, we're still going to get the same amount. I don't quite believe that. I have a feeling that if we do go lower, that number will go lower. If we go higher with BOCES, we're just not going to get anything else. So it's something we need to watch during this whole thing, and I know BOCES doesn't know what to do right now. They're anxious about it because they know that what is proposed will cause great harm to BOCES. Not for the special education program. That's funded very differently than everything else at BOCES. CTI students and all their other programs we do from them, we get BOCES aid. But when it comes to aid for our special education students there, that's a whole different formula, and that's public excess cost, which basically we don't get anything. We're too rich for that. Private excess aid, we get a lot, but not for public, not for BOCES. So overall, yeah, there's an increase, but not tremendously. He added some money for supplies and software, which teachers are using a lot more software now, and which is good to see, and using being interactive with the kids and providing that. And we're also seeing supplies start to go up. Depleted funds over the years, so trying to create some more. Go on to page 14. In the middle of the page, you'll see guidance, BOCES services. I added a .4 CLS guidance teacher there. We're not even sure if BOCES is going to have this program. So I'm going to be meeting with them on Friday. I'm going to see if other school districts are looking for the same type of position, but
That's an ESSA requirement, right? Is that part of?
well, it's not an ESSA requirement. It's a requirement that came out of last year's budget that we need to provide guidance services for K through 6, or well, we already did 6th grade up here, but K through 5, it's their guidance services. A guidance counselor, and I don't know which one, but I know guidance counselors from this building go down, I think on a weekly basis, down to the elementary building, but it's really not working too well. They would rather see somebody who's dedicated to elementary guidance work. This is all new to them. You know, how do you teach a kindergarten about a future job when you've been telling kids how to get into colleges? Now you're doing a 180, going all the way down to kindergarten to tell kids about jobs in the future and all that type of stuff. So, you know, so it's starting very young and it's all brand new. So the question is how other school districts are using it and whether or not they're finding it being as difficult as we're finding it. I know some school districts have hired guidance counselors for there. We just don't, we're not looking for the need for a full-time person. We're looking for a 1 or 2 day a week type of a person. Hard to hire a guidance counselor for 1 or 2 days, so that's why we want to use BOCES. So it's in its infancy. We won't even know if this will go through, just for the fact that this would have to be run by BOCES. And like last year, they did not, but the question was raised last year, so I'll be resurfacing it on Friday with my colleagues to see if there's other school districts who are in the looking to do that type of get into that type of work and be able to provide us with guidance counselors. Yet to see where that goes with that one. So just wanted to put a placeholder in there in case it's available and it's something that the board would like us to do. If we look on to the next page of 15, I put, it's about the fourth line down, you'll see an increase of $20,000 in other expenses for physicians. A request came in from a couple administrators. We, as you know, we have what is called a school physician. And we consult this school physician, our nurses consult with the school physician definitely on a weekly basis. Does our sports physicals, and he's there for just general knowledge. A lot of the stuff, as we see with the coronavirus and things of that nature, this is stuff that goes through the school physician to make sure it's appropriate to send out to our people. What administrators asked for is the same type of person, but on the mental health side. We'd like to find somebody who could be a source for the school district for health or mental health issues. To have somebody consistently there to be able to provide, I'm not saying diagnosis or anything, but how for us to be able to treat that student. What's the best way to do it? What's the appropriate way to do it? So they were looking for outside help for a mental health evaluator. If we go down a little bit further on the social worker, it's just one thing I want to point out. You see most of the salary lines going up minimally, but in this one you do see it going up a little bit higher than typical, and this is because we get less federal aid. These positions were created many years ago for the social worker, where we had funding from federal grants. We still have federal grants, monies, but it's getting smaller and smaller, so the general fund is having to pick up a greater share of their salary every year. And you can see it climbing year after year. It's not so much their salaries, it's more so that our grants aren't picking up as much as they used to. You'll see the next section right below there at the bottom of 15. This is the other area that for pupil personnel, this is our speech teachers taken out of special education. It's more of a related service. Not everybody who gets speech is a special education student. So that's the reason why that's been broken out from special education. If we go on to page 16, there's two areas that I need to go back and take a look at a little bit more closely. I made a mistake last year. We put an extra $10,000 into the budget last year for co-curricular, and I never added it to the budget. So that was one mistake I made. But I'm going back through and looking at every co-curricular position by building to make sure I have everything correct. And I will verify that with each of the principals, because they've requested money too. So this isn't, there's a request for about $15,000 worth of additional new clubs. That's yet to be determined, but that was the request from our two principals in the middle school and high school, recommending definitely additional programs for our students after school. I also need to go back and take a look at the coaching again real closely. Want to make sure there's been a lot of changes as far as how some teams aren't running. And we have places where there's multiple teams running that weren't budgeted that way, and Steve feels as though that's going to be the same way next year. Like 2 modified teams for basketball, for boys and girls. Doesn't think there'll be a varsity next year quite yet for the girls, but looking at that and also looking to get field hockey going again with the modified.
Is that the 48?
No, that's that 48,000 there, that's our athletic trainer. So if you look a couple lines down, you'll see where we took money out of other expenses, and that was the contract we had with Most. So that's been added. Also in BOCES services, one of the things that was added this past year, because it was at very little cost to us this past year, and that's Huddle.
That's what?
Huddle, H-U-D-L. It's a program that coaches use to evaluate their players, evaluate how they play together, and it also can be used by other coaches from other teams, because if you're on the Huddle system, you have access to any teams, so you can look at other teams. College coaches can look at this stuff too. If they're interested in a player or something, they can go back and they can take a look at this thing. So to me, it's can't remember exactly how much it was. I think it was about under 5,000, but Steve felt as though it provided a lot of great benefits, not only to the students, but also their coaches. And they're looking to improve that and to bring it out over other sports.
And which line was that in?
That's BOCES Services, 82855, 490. So you see $7,800 increase. That is not all for Huddle. That's normal increases plus Huddle. Because we also have Family ID in that code now. That's something that people sign up with to kind of looking to maybe expand Family ID to the entire district as far as health information for all the students as a way to update it as opposed to writing it all out and handing it in. I'd rather do it this way, so stuff that you put into the system is there year after year, you just need to modify it as things may change. So, if we go on to the next page.
Tom, coming
yeah.
back, what's pupil services, that increase there?
Okay, so most of that pupil service increase, okay, is for the inclusion of our speech teachers, and that's $187,000 there. So that was the big thing that added to that bottom line. That accounts for more than half of that increase is that line. Plus there was increases, like I say, to co-curricular and coaches, which I know I'm going to be able to back off a bit. But the big increase was basically because of moving the speech teachers into there. That was, like I say, over half the increase. And then the increases to co-curricular and coaches and the athletic trainer, that helps to increase that bottom line. If you go to page 17, transportation, relatively flat, which is good. I projected a 3% increase, but we've been able to, work on some things and get it fine-tuned. So looking good so far, but one of the things that still needs to be evaluated, like I said earlier, Ms. Davison is going through her CSE meetings, and there's a lot of different placements she thinks for next year. And really have to look at those placements to see how potentially I could save money by combining routes, or does it cost me more because I have to uncombine routes? Most of them are single runs, so I think most of them potentially could get combined, if anything. So I'm hoping that will be less. The other thing too is I'm working with BOCES and some of our local school districts to see if we can combine routes in a number of different ways to share that cost through BOCES. So more work being done on that. We had a kickoff meeting last in January, and we'll be meeting again soon to start looking at where our runs are and determine what makes sense. So if Hyde Park's running through here and going up to Red Hook and can pick up one of our kids and save us a whole bus, that's what we're looking for. So the next big area is employee benefits. And I'll go through these kind of quickly because there's no real big things that jump out at you. Retirement system, relatively unchanged, basically just going up due to increases in salaries. So that's all that is. We're at the same percentage.
Tom, in the first line, is it just me, or is that, it's showing it goes down?
It went down a little
budget,
bit,
But
yep.
then
Yep.
showing an increase?
Last year it went down a little bit, and this year it's going back up. So, and that's mainly, the rates have remained the same, but employee salaries basically going up is what that amounts to. The teacher retirement system was at 8.86, and it seems as though they're going to lock in to 9.53. So not too bad of an increase. I mean, it was much worse earlier. It was up to, I think, oh my God, it was quite a bit higher earlier. So they seem to have locked in that rate kind of early, which has been helpful to us. Social Security basically gone up by salary increase, but also the other thing that happens is the FICA limit increases. So we keep paying FICA a little bit longer on people than we did this year. So they hit you in two ways that way. Workers' comp, we have a meeting on Friday to discuss final rates. We've been doing very good as of late. Let's continue to do that. I wouldn't expect too much of an increase there. If we get on to the next page, health insurance, looking only at about a 4% increase. Rates are at 7% right now, so that's what I have them in the spreadsheet, is 7%, but you see the increase is less than that. Going back through, did a fine tooth and trying to figure out where we're creating extra fund balance, and this is one area I found that we are creating fund balance from, so I went back and to tighten that up. So, hopefully, I would expect, like I say, we're at 7% right now. I would expect it to go down to at least 6%. It could go even further down than the 6, but a 1% decrease in DHIC will save us approximately $50,000 right now, maybe a tad more than that. So I would expect to see some savings there. We have a meeting next Wednesday where we'll get kind of some insight as to where the negotiations went. They had a negotiation session at the end of January with Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, so we'll have a good idea of where we're at. So everything else there looks good. Debt service. I put in there what the true changes to debt service were this year, okay? So we have our project out there. I've reached out to Chuck and Jason at Bernie Donegan's, and hopefully they'll be down here soon to meet with me and Christine, to meet with us to discuss the completion of this project and the timing, because in our state aid figures, it gave us a half a year's worth of building aid on this project. The thing is, it's got to be done and reports filed. Not sure if that's going to happen yet, and that's what we need to sit down to figure out what's best as far as this budget is concerned. Do we include it as if we're going to bond this summer, or not include it and it's going to happen afterwards? There's a lot of timing issues. I have some concerns about the work being done, completely done, and getting substantial completion certification from our architect to be able to put that into SED. So there's still some time to come on this particular item. This one hasn't been completed. It doesn't affect the tax cap itself, but it could increase the taxes, but it won't affect your tax levy limit. You'll be able to do it within it. So, but still a lot more to be determined. We were looking to be, this is the year we finalize and get it up to its full amount, but yet to see. I need to have that meeting with them. So want to go back to another situation when we talk about debt service. And I want you to go back to page number 6. At the very top, you see the BOCES admin charges. Right below it, you have the BOCES capital expenses. One of the things that has occurred this year is, and it was going to be an issue for us and for other school districts and how it affected their tax levy cap, is that BOCES capital projects were excluded from the tax cap. You had to create that as an ordinary expense. And now it's in there, it can be excluded from the tax cap. So we have the ability here. Our payment next year is roughly $600,000. We have the ability to do this at no cost to the taxpayer by using fund balance. That's one thing. Or we can continue with the plan. Now, our original plan last year, before our fund balance increased, is that we are planning to just pay this over the 15 years. We're going to make payments to them. So in other words, I owe them $600,000 this year. The idea is we go out and get a bond anticipation note for the $6,000, pay BOCES with that. We would only recognize about $70,000 worth of those expenditures this year, or next year, but $70,000 for the next 15 years, each and every year, versus being able to pay our $600,000 off this year. I think next year is about $400,000, and then that would finish it and we'd be done with this whole thing and not have to carry that expense out over the next 15 years plus interest. You're not going to get any aid back on this whatsoever. we're considered too wealthy. They don't use our building aid ratio, they use our water ratio, which we're at 0.
Do you know how much interest we would save doing that?
I haven't figured it out, but I can do that. I can definitely figure out what the cost, so that's actually part of the thing with Bernie Donegan, with Jason and Chuck. They would be able to provide us with that information. So I'll get that put together and report back to you on that. Any questions on the expenditure side?
It's a lot.
I know it's a lot. I'm trying to get through this quickly.
No,
But there's
it's
a
a lot.
lot.
It's
There's
a
a
lot
lot
to
to
think
go
about.
through. And just to let you know, other school districts will do this sections at a time. Well, they'll do a drill down and just, what's that?
So now you tell us.
Well, something to think about. I've seen places where they'll do general support, and they'll only do the first like 5 pages, but they'll get in depth into those 5 pages. And then they'll do a section on instruction, and that will be all in depth on instruction, and then they'll do another one, which is like all others.
have to go back
Operation
to
and maintenance
starting
and
in December again.
and then you put it all back together. Well, no, and that's one of the things. You present this section, you present this section, we print this section. Until you get all those presentations, the whole budget is not put together. So you don't know what the bottom line is yet. You see each of the presentations separately, make your determinations on that, put it all together, and then start working from there. But it's a different way of doing it. It's something we can discuss in finance if we'd like to. So the next thing I'd like you to do is go to the back of this.
Tom,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, quick question. Not
Yeah,
to
so
linger
no.
any longer on it, but the interfund transfers, the undistributed 395, what was that a total
Okay.
of?
What page are you?
I'm on the last thing
last
above the
page.
grand
Okay.
totals on page 18.
There's 2 things, interfund transfers. The first one was to the school lunch fund. And we have $15,000 in there currently. And last year, we put $15,000 into the budget for the first time. And so far, since we put it into the budget, cafeteria's been looking good. So maybe that's the trick, is to put money in the budget and it'll go over. We don't use the money. So that $15,000 was to be used, if needed, to cover any deficits in the school lunch fund. Last year, we produced a profit, so we didn't have to move any money, so that was great. So, and then last year in 18-19, we had $0. So last year during the budget process, we created $15,000, and it doesn't look like we'll need it this year. Looking good so far. Let's keep it that way. I know I don't want to say it. Sorry, Christine. I know you don't want me to say it. So that's the first one. Now, transfer to special aid fund is made up of 2 pieces. One of them, which may get addressed through the finance committee and a recommendation from them. But it's made up of 2 things. The first thing is, this is our 20% share of special education costs in the summertime. So when a student goes to school in the summer for a student with disabilities, whether it's through a BOCES or in a school district, in a school or whatever the placement is, we pay it up front 100%, okay, out of the federal funds, the special aid fund. Then the state gives us 80% of that. So we're on the hook for 20%. So part of this money, and I believe it's like, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it's near 40,000, if not in the low 40,000s, is our 20% share of summer special education cost. The additional amount is, we, 2 audits ago, it was brought to our attention that our special aid fund balance was in a negative position. I think it was at that time 127,000, something like that. It was under 130,000, and it was in a negative position. The special aid fund should always just be at 0. It's been that way for decades. But what was happening is the amount kept on growing. And what we found out, it gets back to that 20% and 80% share. So in the years prior, we were just, and this goes even back before I was here, this goes back to the previous business official too. They were strictly taking 80% of the summer costs charging it to the federal program, and 20% was being charged to us. But what was happening is, we were getting always reimbursed 80%, because some things they wouldn't allow, they disallowed it. So over the years, that amount just kept on inching up, 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 up. And when finally our current auditor said, "Oh, wait a second, guys, you need to do something about it." But it's been on our books for 20 years, but it just continued to grow, and he says, "That's got to be zero." So we came up with a plan that we would pay this off over 10 years, okay, $13,000 a year for 10 years. But we may be in the position now to be able to handle that through our fund balance and just write that whole thing off, and we'd be able to back off at least $13,000 out of here. Not only this year, but for the next 12 years, that expense goes away.
That's the 395, the 395,000?
Oh, this 395?
That was
over
what I was
a year?
asking
Under budget to budget.
I kept not wanting to interrupt you, but
should have
then
interrupted.
I was like,
All right, I was
it's
trying
gonna
to
come back
explain
around, it's gonna come
interfund transfers. This 95 is a compilation of interfund transfers, debt service, and employee benefits. So if you go to the column
I
employee
see,
benefits,
okay.
the 393, the
Okay.
1900, that gets you 395. Sorry about that.
That's
Should have
okay.
interrupted
I
me
should
right
have
away.
interrupted, yeah.
Should have interrupted you right away. Because it probably went over your head anyways.
No, I
It's not a-
followed,
it's not an
but
easy
it wasn't what
topic.
I was asking about, but yeah, okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, thanks.
Let's look at the tax levy limit. So this should be in the first part of, when you flip over your draft, first draft, you'll see it up here. And this is just a draft at this moment, because this gets into a lot of the building aid and things of that nature. And I did my best to call out those numbers to give you what I believe is our,
I'm not finding it, hold
okay, go to your budget, first draft,
on. Okay.
right there.
Tax levy limits.
I know, I did. I put all the first draft in one place and instead of breaking it all out.
It's all right.
Okay, so what we do here real quickly is you start with your prior year tax levy, which was just short of $30 million. You multiply it by the tax base growth factor. For this town, 1.1%. That's fantastic. That is the growth of this school district in the previous year. This is what's been keeping the school district afloat, is this growth rate. We've always gotten above and beyond what the tax levy limit is allowed to give us, which has been great. You subtract out lieu of payments, pilots. I did not change this $1,452,000. It's the same on both sides of the page. That's the number that could change based upon my discussions about building aid with Bernie Donegan. The allowable growth factor it's at the lesser of 2% of the CPI. The CPI was 1.81%, so we're not all the way up at the 2%. We subtract out the pilots. Switch over to the next page. Gets into the whole thing. Don't worry about this, but basically, right now, our maximum allowable levy is $30.7 million, or 2.84%. Okay? So that's a good number. Okay, so basically take your 1.81 and your 1.1% on the first page gives you, what is that, 2.81? 2.91. But there's some factors into that, so it comes out to 2.84. So you're looking at a tax levy increase of almost $850,000. But once this will get modified, once we have our sit down with Bernie Donegan's office, okay? So that's the tax levy limit. So now let's go look at the next page, which is our revenue. So not too much has changed, and we'll go over this. So right now, this budget I presented tonight created a tax increase of 3.9%, which is over 1% higher than what we're allowed. But we'll get to the bottom line here in a second. So we have our pilots, a slight increase, but an increase is a decrease on your taxes, it washes itself out. Other charges for schools, this is a new category we added this year. These are health services that we provide to Primrose, okay? Likewise, when our students are attending Lourdes, Dutchess Day, the Master's School, there's a few of them that we go to. We pay our share of health insurance, which is nurses, speech, things of that nature. If Primrose needs help, we're to provide them with help. So we then charge the other districts who are going to Primrose. We have students from Red Hook going, New Paltz, Kingston, Hyde Park. You're billing those school districts for those health services we provide to the school. They don't always ask for them, but we're there if they request it. Interest in earnings, I would have loved to have increased it this year, but with the decrease in the rates, we've kind of want to keep them steady right now. I think we're probably looking at around 120 this year maybe, so, and we started with some really good rates at the beginning of the year, so we don't want to move interest in earnings, which is 2401. So no pay, insurance recoveries, refunds from BOCES, refunds of prior years, nothing really, nothing changes, you know. Sometimes we're above, sometimes we're below. You just never know with some of these codes. Sometimes they're one-shot deals and the likes. But if we go to the second page, wanted to talk about our state aid. And as you can see, it shrunk down to 2 lines now. Because that's what's happened. They've gotten rid of BOCES aid, textbook, computer, libraries. They're all gone. They've all been rolled up into what we call is the basic formula. I know we talked about this when we went to see our legislator, was it 2 weeks ago now? So what has happened as far as the governor's proposal, he's proposed 10 categorical aids. Those are aids that are based upon what you expense the prior year, such as BOCES, computer software, textbooks. He's basically said, that's it. This is what you get. This is what you're planning to get. And we're going to take that dollar, and we're just going to put that into foundation aid. Now, it's called basic formula. Everything is going into there right now. But foundation aid has been increased by BOCES, textbooks, lottery aids, and all those types of things. They've all been rolled up into foundation aid, but it's not truly foundation aid. But it's a way to make it look like you're getting closer to getting your foundation aid, but they took it away from everywhere else. And they've capped it, and they said, these numbers aren't going to move anymore. So it's going to be really interesting, and we need to keep attuned to what is going on in Albany in regards to to the state aid formulas. They're drastic changes, drastic changes.
So based on this though, does it mean that we're getting more under this formula? Because I thought last time we were not getting more.
No, they're still running the formula. They're not running the formula as it currently would be. They've just taken it. They gave us a little bit more in it, a little bit more in foundation aid, so it increased a little bit. But most of those increases, that $20,000 increase, a lot of that was generated because of additional BOCES aid we got. Because we started working with the RIC across the river for our accounting software and things of that nature. So the increase there mostly is due to BOCES aid, which is now capped.
So if it was done the other way, like the way it was done in the past, it would be less?
Oh yeah, if they went and ran the formulas, we would get less. We would get less in foundation aid if they ran the current formula, because our enrollment has dropped so much from where it was. But then again, a lot of enrollments across the state have dropped, so I don't know how that would bear out across the state and how that may affect us. Because when they ran this formula, I'm going to say, and I'm just making this up, there were 2 million students in the state. Now there's 1.8 million in the state. So how that could have changed, hey, that's an extra 10%. Where does that go? How does that get divided up? So that would be interesting to see. It's a very convoluted formula, and he's trying to make it appear that he's funding more of the foundation aid when he's not. This happened to me back in the early 90s. What happened is, I don't know if you see it up there, it's called lottery aid. You don't budget anything for it, but they make us account for it. But lottery aid was given out in, was it the late 80s or early 90s? You got lottery aid, and I was in the Carmel School District. We got $1 million for that. The next year, you still got your $1 million in lottery aid, but they dropped your basic formula by $1 million. So they can still say, you got lottery aid. Yeah, but you dropped the formula by $1 million. It was a one-time shot. and then it was gone. So we'll have to see where this goes. They're in a bit of a hurt up there, so it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. So more to come on that, and we'll just have to keep abreast of and talk to our legislators again. I know we're seeing Mr. Cahill shortly, so we'll need to emphasize that with them. If you look like the second line from the bottom, we see the appropriated fund balances decreased from $850 to $750. We're just doing $100,000 a year, but that $100,000 creates more of a gap. So I'm not sure that's something we may decide, let's keep it the same. So right now, the gap is $317,000. If you put that $100,000 back into appropriate fund balance, now the balance is $217,000. So just an idea of some things that we can do in the future to potentially mitigate that. There's still a lot of stuff that we're looking at right now. The principals are going back and taking a look at each of the positions who submitted their retirement papers to see whether or not that position needs to be filled. And so I'm sure at our next board meeting, we'll get recommendations on each of those positions. Now, there's 5. One of them has already been taken care of, and that's the elementary position. But the 2 middle school special ed teachers and the 3 high school teachers, I'm hoping at the next meeting, Joe will have a recommendation as to whether they're filled or not filled, so we can get out to place advertisements if we need to. Other questions? I know this is a lot to take in. I'm sorry for how long it takes, but that first time out is very long and tedious, but it's a lot of stuff you need to know, and I needed to show you the high level. I mean, get into the nitty gritty, we'll be here for hours. And so, but if you have any questions, please reach out to me. If there's some additional information that you're looking for, I'll take the time, me and Christine will prepare it so we can present it to you at the board meeting next time. And when you make a request, please make sure you let everybody know what your question is, because sometimes I've had in the past where someone asks a question and someone asks me the same question. So, so if you ask a question, make sure you hit all your board members and Joe, so he's aware of it. That way we all know what your questions are, and it might be a question somebody else might have been thinking, or it may fine tune the question. You may see it and say, oh, need a little bit more information. So, any questions? All right.
And
Good.
just remember,
Sorry it took so long. It really am. It's long and boring and chatty. I know.
just remember to bring these each meeting until we get through the budget.
Yes, and I'll try to make sure to have additional things will be coming and be hole punched to be ready to insert into it. I know I got a bunch for staff and for tuition students. I just didn't have time to get rid of all the names, just to leave the positions and student numbers.
And like Tom said, if you have any questions, send them ahead of time, so a lot of times they have to gather that information. Thanks for all the work, Tom, obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of work on a lot of people, so.
I'm sure there'll be more questions for you next time.
Oh, I know there will be. I know there will be, and I expect more, because there are a lot of things out there that even I have questions about.
All right, we're gonna move on to board committee reports, long-range planning.
Okay, so I apologize that I didn't get these in to the minutes. And I don't want to read them because they're really long. So just the highlights that the first paragraph, I'll basically read the first paragraph and the last paragraph and then touch on the middle. But in advance of this meeting, the committee asked Joe for a detailed picture of what would happen to the master schedules and teaching loads if the district were to reach a time when we have 60 students per grade level. This number is lower than our current projections for the next 5 years, but considering how small this year's kindergarten is, we wanted a worst case view for the future. So then we ran through the principal's responses to those questions. And we talked about changes to the master schedule. We talked about changes to the number of sections. We talked about what kinds of questions that brings up. Tom went over enrollment projections and different ways to do the enrollment projections. And then we came back to talking about how we could preserve the middle school model even with changes and or disruptions to routine and enrollment, not taking into account restructuring, but just due to the changes that are happening as a result of enrollment, how can we preserve that? The principals brought up a number of reasons against restructuring, and the committee asked that we could just look at hypotheticals without rejecting the idea up front. The main reason, so now to the last paragraph, Diane talked about how the committee has looked at a lot of different ideas over the past few years to address the dual challenges of declining enrollment and financial limitations. She noted that the committee has not determined that a restructuring of schools is the only solution. However, all of the other options that have been discussed do not seem to address both challenges, whereas restructuring seems to have the potential to do so, and that's why we were asking for the principals to study the matter and to come up with ideas of how to preserve the best aspects of the middle school model, even if the schools were to be restructured. It is a conversation that will definitely be continuing with the principals.
Questions for long-range plan? Okay, personnel?
So as many of you know, we're reviewing our RTA contract because we're going to start negotiations with the RTA sometime in March. So we discussed the contract and talked about different things that we wanted to address at this year's negotiations. And then we had a conference call with David Shaw, who's our legal counsel, and talked about trends and things that he's seen in Dutchess County with contracts that have settled over the last year. Next meeting is February 27th, and we're hoping to meet with the RTA in March to go over kind of the ground rules and how we want to structure the first set of meetings.
Any questions for personnel? Okay, we're going to move on to the 2020 BOCES board nominations. And I thank you very much for staying with us. Today, there's two spots, I believe, open on the BOCES board, and one of the candidates running for that spot has, 3 spots, thank you, has sent you the information that you have in your packet, and he's here with us tonight, and he wanted to just say a few words. And I appreciate you hanging out all this time, Mr. Stanley.
Thank you, Madam President. Do I address the microphone?
Yeah, that's just for the camera.
I do apologize. I stood in front of your camera reading the periodicals before I realized I probably cut off thousands of people. Able to keep pace with that wonderful budget presentation. Actually, I'm delighted to hear it, and it's a thankless task that Mr. Burnell has to deliver, but it was very clear, and it was great interest to me since it is my hope to represent you on the board of the Dutchess County BOCES. So my name is Gully Stanford. I retired here 5 years ago with my wife from careers in Colorado. A lot of the time in the performing arts. I was manager of regional theater movement, and then moved on to the Department of Higher Education and ran a program known as Gear Up, which is a little like trio programs that Lyndon Johnson developed, but it was developed by under President Clinton to help low-income first-generation students stay in high school and prepare for post-secondary readiness. I was delighted to hear that you're looking into elementary school guidance counseling. That is, I can assure you, having worked with guidance counselors I was the state's director of alignment, so I had to do everything from early childhood right through postgraduate work and on into the workforce, working with the various stakeholder groups. And the earlier that we can encourage young people to understand what it takes to achieve their dreams. We don't want to limit their dreams, but to show them what the pathways are, the better off. So it's a great pleasure to be before the Rhinebeck board because although I live in the Hyde Park School District, I was aware of some of the marvelous things that you do out here. There are 3 vacancies, and 2 of the incumbents will be running again, a gentleman from Beacon and a gentleman from Millbrook. But there is one for which, as far as I know, there are no other candidates, and I would very much like to be your candidate. At a certain point before March the 1st, you'll be invited to fill out a nomination form, and there'll be 3 slots in there, and I do hope that I'll be one of your 3. So BOCES really intrigues me for a number of reasons. Primarily because I'm very passionate about career and technical education, which used in the old days to be known as voc ed and had something with stigma about it. But now with the new 3 R's of relevance and rigor and relationships, career and technical education, particularly under the Perkins 4 Act, and now we're into Perkins 5, is really making it possible for young people to make the connection between what they're learning in the academic classroom and the application of that to life skills and readiness, either for career and college. And you've probably seen some of the articles recently that we're moving away from that obsession, if you like, of 4-year college for all. By all means, we need as many people as possible to be able to move on to 2-year and 4-year colleges, but actually the data show that a grounding in career technical education while in middle or high school, and let me repeat that, because the law actually allows us to enroll students in middle school in career and technical education. Here in Dutchess County and in New York, and Mr. Burnell shakes his
No.
Hasn't
been around.
But if we start them a little earlier, and I loved what I heard about the partnerships between Rhinebeck and your other school districts, and that's the next reason why I would love to be at the BOCES, because I would like to see improved efficiencies and collaborations, so that our students get obviously the services they need. And trust me, I'm very much a respecter of local control, so you're not seeing a candidate here who would in any way suggest violating local control. But partnerships are a wonderful thing. And if we can build partnerships, and if we can use the services of the BOCES to facilitate those partnerships, I think we should. I was listening as you talked about transportation, which is a big issue. The other side of my life is I serve on the county's Youth Board Coordinating Council. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's part of the Office of Family and Community Services under the county executive. And the county executive, you may have heard a little of this proposed Path to Promise initiative. Has that resonated at all? No, not around this table yet. I'll be impertinent enough to share with you a flyer produced by the county government, and I'll send to the board clerk, and Mr. I will send a link to the page on the county website. The Path to Promise, in fact, I came here from Millerton earlier this evening, and it's a little misty out there, ladies and gentlemen, be careful as you go home, but drove over from Millerton, where we were meeting with a dozen young people at the Northeast Community Centre to talk about 6, we call them domains. One is learning, another is safety, another is material basic needs, another is physical health, mental health, and family relationships. And essentially the vision here is to ensure that the services provided in our county, whether it's by the county government, by the municipal government, working in partnership with our schools and colleges for young people aged 0 to 19, and working with our community partners, that we ensure that the services in these areas are available and accessible and affordable to all people, young people and their families. So I'm actually been appointed the co-chair of that with a newly appointed Assistant Commissioner, Carmen Smallwood, to implement the Path to Promise. So I feel that serving on the board of the BOCES would be able to pull together this effort to serve our youth, whether it be within the formal context formal education or the informal context of what happens before and after school, what happens in summers, what happens in the internships, the job familiarizations, and all those things that we do to build experiences or to create experiences for our young people that truly prepare them for success. My bona fides are that I was elected to the Colorado State Board of Education, served a 6-year term there, served on the Budget Steering Committee for the Denver Public Schools, so very familiar with the intricacies, and I immediately understand that there will be interesting discussions with the BOCES over the coming years as to ensuring that we at the BOCES provide you with the services that you need, but also that those services are delivered in an affordable and efficient way. And perhaps, having served in an elected position, we can influence legislation and the somewhat confusing executive system in this state that I'm still learning about. But we can find ways to try to ensure, even in the State of the Union speech, which I'm sure everybody listened to closely, there was a reference to additional funding for career and technical education to be brought to the communities that need it most. And Duchess, in my opinion, and what I've learned, and I look forward to learning more from the School Boards Association when I meet with them, Duchess is not necessarily getting its fair share of the funds that specifically help our young people to prepare for careers in college, as well as our adult education. I understand there are many other things that BOCES does as well. I've gone on far too long. I took advantage of the fact that you invited me to wait and not comment, because you'd have gavelled me into silence long ago. But I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the kind of public elected person who will show up, won't speak so long-windedly, but will always be available to you 24/7. And I do hope that I believe the current leadership of the BOCES is visionary. I think there's great energy there, and I do believe that we're coming into an era where the services that you need will be delivered, and I would like to be part of doing that.
Thank you for coming tonight and being willing to serve on the BOCES board, and being willing to come out here and talk to us so we can learn a little bit about you. I appreciate that.
Well, you're very kind. I'll sit down. But even in the meanwhile, because this ties in so closely with the Path to Promise, if there are services that are needed for the young people of Rhinebeck, the families of Rhinebeck, that either can be provided by the county government or by other institutions of education or by the community, just by doing all of this better, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to good news. Okay. Old business. I have a couple things, old business. Just a reminder that those of us attending meeting with Kevin Cahill is Tuesday. Tuesday, it's coming up, so just a reminder of that. I also want to give a reminder that we talked last time about the deadline for applications, anyone running for the board. That's it's in our packet, but it's April 20th. If anyone's going to be running, that will be on the 20th. You can pass that out. The ceremony to rededicate the auditorium is next Friday. So I just want to put that out there again. Everyone can attend. And then the other thing I had was just the superintendent search update. As we mentioned, the day in the district schedule has been complete. Whitney, thank you for all your help on that. We did, the administrators helped us with that. It's not going to be perfect for everybody. We did our best to incorporate as many people as possible. It's going to be a long day for our candidates. It starts at 7:45 in the morning and it'll go through about 8:30 in the evening. So it's a long It's a long day, but it includes, all groups, everybody in the staff, students, and community members. There are still spots if community members are interested in meeting with the candidates. You must be available potential of 3 days. We're expecting between 2 and 3 finalists. It could end up being 2, but so March 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The time for parents, there's 2 times, parents and community members, 7:45 to 8:40, bless you, in the morning.
Sorry about that.
Or in the evening, it's 5:30 to 6:25. If anyone is interested, just need to send me an email. There's still room in both slots. So anyone that's interested and available and wants to be part of that, just let me know. What else? That's all I have. Another opportunity for public comment. Anybody else wants to? Okay. Any other? Mark?
So I just want to let everybody know that as president of the Dutchess County School Board Association, I attended Elizabeth Lobby Day yesterday in Albany with several of our colleagues from Wappingers, Weebatuck, Arlington, and Pine Plains. We talked tonight about a lot of the topics that we talked about with our legislators. We actually met with Senator Serino and Assemblyperson Barrett. So I'll just back up a step. The day started off with a speech by a student from Long Island who spoke about the need for more mental health services in schools. So that was one of the subjects we discussed with our legislators. We also talked about BOCES and this proposed changes to in the governor's budget to the BOCES formulas. And our colleague from Wappingers hit very hard with the fact that they actually cut social work positions that they were planning to implement in their budget for this year. They had to cut those so that they could hire guidance counselors for elementary instead. So she kind of let the legislators have it about that stuff. So we'll have to see what we get out of that. But I thought the meetings were productive, and we'll have to see what happens.
Thanks for attending, Mark. As much as we can let them hear our point of view, I think that's good. Any other? Don't have any? All right, move on to our action items. Does anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Okay. On motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following consent items.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes. On recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following resolution. Whereas Chapter 253 of the laws of 2016 amended Section 458-B of the real property tax law to provide school districts with the option to provide a partial tax exemption to eligible Cold War veterans, those in active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces during the period from September 2nd, 1945 to December 26, 1991. And whereas the Board of Education wishes to adopt a provision of Section 45AB of the real property tax law, which would grant a partial exemption from taxation for school district purposes for certain real property situated in the school district and owned and used as the primary residence of eligible Cold War veterans or the spouse or unremarried spouse of someone who served during the Cold War period. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby adopts the Cold War veterans exemption pursuant to Section 45AB of the real property tax law for assessment rolls prepared on the basis of the taxable status date occurring on or after January 1st, 2020 at the following basic minimum levels.
Maximum.
Maximum. 1, basic exemption. Tax exemption of 10% of the assessed value of the property not to exceed $8,000 or the product of $8,000 multiplied by the latest state equalization rate for the assessing unit, whatever is less. 2 disabled veterans in addition to the above exemption where the veteran received a compensation rate from the Veterans Administration or Department of Defense based upon a service-related disability. Qualifying residential property will be exempt to the extent of the product of the assessed value multiplied by 50% of the veteran's disability rating, not to exceed 40,000, or the product of 40,000 multiplied by the latest state equalization rate, whichever is less. And be it further resolved that the board directs the district clerk to provide a certified copy of this resolution to Dutchess County and the assessors for the other taxing jurisdictions located within this school district.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve as a final reading and adoption of reading board policy number 5220, student publications.
So moved.
Second.
Any conversation, any discussion? All those in favor? That motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional non-unit salaries for managerial confidential employees for 2019-2020. See attached.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve spring coaches for the 2019-2020 school year. Baseball varsity, Bill Carney, $3,964. Modified, Mike DiNatale, $2,354. Varsity assistant, George Nicolatis, volunteer. Track varsity distance and hurdles, Chris Sneed, $4,113. Varsity sprinting jumping, Justin Randall, $4,113. Modified, to be decided, $2,528. Tennis varsity, Eric Thomas, $3,003. Softball, JV softball, Eric Brion, $2,894. Modified, Taylor Snyder, $2,413. Lacrosse, JV, offensive, to be decided, $3,964. And JV lacrosse defensive, to be decided, $3,964.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Sandy Goodman to the .4 FTE position of homebound instructor effective February 12, 2020 at a salary of step 1 MA $61,425 prorated in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2019-20.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Angela Mendez to the position of special education teacher for home community-based services effective February 12, 2020 at an hourly rate of $60.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion passes. No executive session at this time. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes.